So I'm Julia Davis, and I'm here with Tessa Venuti Sanderson. I am founder of Yoga Teachers Forum, and together, Tessa and I are founders of Circle Holding, and we are writers of the Circle Holding book as well, which is going to come out in October. Thank you so much to those of you who have decided to join us live, and a very warm welcome to you if you are watching the recording too. For all of us, we're going to have an opportunity right now to settle into our nervous system. So maybe if you are sat at your computer screen, you might choose to take your eyes away from the screen for a moment. And you might begin to notice where you're sitting, and maybe you can find your sit bones. And you might choose to allow your attention to come to your breathing. So you might notice maybe the coolness of the air entering through your nostrils. Or it is a reasonably cold January day. So if you're congested in your nostrils, you might be breathing in and out through your mouth, and that is absolutely fine. Can you find your breath? Is there a way for your breath to feel easy and comfortable? And in tune with the theme of safe space and brave space, I'm going to share a poem with you. Come to the edge. Come to the edge. We might fall. Come to the edge. It's too high. Come to the edge. And they came. And he pushed. And they flew. So gently bringing your attention back to your body, back to your seat beneath. Your eyes have been closed, maybe blinking them open and allowing yourself to look around the room in which you're sitting. And then coming into community with us. And we're not in a circle now because we're recording. So those of you who are looking at the recording will be able to see me, and then you'll be able to see me and Tessa. But we're in a little circle today, and you can look in, and I can see you and you can see us, and you can tell that we're in a little bit of a community here. The poem that I shared, you can tell how old this book is because you can't even read the front. It's so worn. It's a book called The Poetry Pharmacy, and the poem was by Christopher Logue, and it was called Come to the Edge. So very warm welcome to you. We've got people from all over the UK who've joined us live, but if you're joining us via recording and you're from anywhere else in the world, you're very welcome. The majority of people who've popped in the chat where they're from are yoga teachers who hold circles every so often or are looking to run a circle, and some are looking for connection as well. And this can be a really lovely way to gain connection with the Yoga Teachers Forum community to come along to one of these free mini trainees. So you're very, very welcome here. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to do a little introduction of myself and Tessa, so you can hear a little bit about what our experience is with circle holding and why it is a passion of ours. And then we're going to look at the difference between a brave space and a safe space. And we're going to do that through journaling, through shared listening, and through discussion. And then we're going to give you 3 tips for creating a brave space. The first is going to be relating to the clarity of your invitation. The second is going to be looking at having clear precepts for your circle. And the third is going to be looking at honoring boundaries. And we'll give examples of each of those 3. There's only so much that you can do in an hour, but the intention of today is that you will walk away with something that you can actually tangibly use with your clients and with your students. Well, also, you'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit about the training that we're running. We've got training happening in London in February, and we've got online training happening. So we'll give a little bit of an explanation of what that is as well. And there will be a special discount, and we'll be popping that into the chat. And also we've got a free little guide to circle holding that we'll be sharing with all of you as well. So we're going to start with a little introduction, and I will pass you over to Tessa.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that although this is a training rather than a true circle, we're trying to model what would happen in a circle. So we've been doing introductions and a settling practice, so that when people arrive, whether it's in person or like online today, you're helping people settle into the space and calming their nervous system. So we don't, we're doing little brief ways of doing it today. We did an introduction via the chat, whereas, if it was a true circle, you'd probably go around and do an initial check-in. It might just be your name and one word for how you're feeling. But as we go through, you'll sort of see different things being modelled. So of how a circle would actually run. But do you want me to start with an introduction of myself, Julia, and then
Yes,
come back to you? So I started the main circle that's been going the longest for me is my women's circle, and it's 9.5 years old now. And I started it because I just felt there was a real need. I wanted to go to one, and there wasn't one near enough. So having been to a number of quite a lot of retreats over the years and women's workshops, I sort of had a sense of how I would want it to be, and I just dived in and started a red tent. And then since then, I've been doing other kinds of circles. So I currently also run a pregnancy stroke new mums talking circle, where people can really talk honestly about the experience of being a parent. And then I also run mum and daughter circles, particularly around puberty, and they've run in different formats. So for a while I ran it every month, over a year. I've also run it quarterly and then ad hoc as well. So different kinds of circles, online, in person, at festivals, in my lounge, very wide range of things. I'll hand over to you, Julia.
So my experience of circle goes right back to my childhood in community circles as a teenager. That was something that was very, very much encouraged. I'm Jewish. It was Jewish groups for Jewish kids coming together, sitting in circle, discussing the topic of the day. It's something that is kind of ingrained in the culture that I come from. And that can be true of many religions, that there's opportunities to sit in circle and do really active listening. I took it straight into my yoga teaching. I teach classes where we welcome everyone into the circle of the class. Every class, people are greeted by their names. They're given the opportunity to have a little check-in. That in all of the classes that I teach, there is the opportunity for everyone who is a participant of that class to speak and to be listened to. When I teach meditation, I teach it in circles so that people have the opportunity to do the practice and then share their experience of the practice. The same with Yoga Nidra. When I share it, there's circle holding after that. I also run not regular circles, but I run circles for yoga teachers. All the trainings that I run involve the circle process. And I've run various community circles over very many years. And it is key to the way that I believe education can work extremely well. And it is integral to the education within the Yoga Teachers Forum. So all the courses that I run, and many of the courses in Yoga Teachers, are run in circle with participation. They couldn't happen if you didn't turn up to the actual training itself, which has become a thing that's online. Like in person, obviously you would turn up to the training, but often you may have gone to things where you've been taught at and taught to, and you've sat there, you've written your notes and you've learned. A lot of the training that we run, and certainly the circle holding training that we run, is all about participation. It's about speaking skills and listening skills. And as yoga teachers, what I found is, if I'm running a workshop, there'll always be a circle element to the workshop. There will always be a part of that workshop where the people who are there have the opportunity to speak and be listened to. It tends to be a very key reason why people come to something. We actually asked at the beginning of this session, what brought you here? And one person responded, I came here for community. And that is often the reason why people will be joining us for a yoga class. So giving people that space to have a circle where they can speak and be listened to is key to building community. Okay, so we're now going to go on and look at the difference between a safe space and a brave space. So before we tell you what we think the difference is between a safe space and a brave space, we would love you to have a think about that for yourself. There's something that brought you here. There's something that made you think, oh, I'm really interested in looking at what a brave space is and what a safe space is. So what I'd love for you to do is write down, well, maybe start with a sentence. For me, a safe space is, or I believe a brave space to be. That might be something that you can just have a little scribble down. If you haven't brought a pen and paper with you, you can pop it in the chat. You can use the chat as your place to share. And if you're watching this online, I really encourage you to have a think about it for yourself as well.
If you're watching the recording later, rather than fast forward, just do stop for a moment, because journaling can be a really good way of giving people a chance to think before you're asking them to actually share out loud in a circle, particularly if it's a sensitive topic or a really deep topic that people need time, rather than asking a question and it goes very quiet. Like, oh.
And you might be thinking, I came here to learn what a safe space or a brave space is. Why are they asking me to think about it for myself? And that's fair enough. We will be sharing what we believe the difference is, but it's nice for you to do that too. And absolutely, as Tess has just said, when we are looking at issues that are maybe a little bit challenging or difficult to articulate, if we're in circle and we give people the opportunity to write down their thoughts first, then that makes it more spacious. And actually, we're going to be doing this in 3 ways before we give you our views. Okay, so hopefully you've had the time now to write down what you believe a safe space to be and what you believe a brave space is. And maybe, I don't know whether anyone's put it in the chat, you could pop in the chat. Yeah, there you go. I've got a few people. So we've got safe space equals my tribe, brave space, speak my truth. Lovely. Safe space held, brave space held and heard. Lovely. If anyone else has got anything they want to put in the chat about what they believe the difference between a safe space and a brave space is, because there is no right and wrong. There have been whole books written about safe space and brave space. Safe space, unjudged, welcomed. Yeah, lovely. So often a safe space is about our own experience. So when we're thinking about a safe space, you might often respond with, well, I feel I'm in a safe space when. So that, that's a really lovely example of that is my tribe. I feel safe in my tribe. And when we're talking about a brave space, that might be with the space that we're trying to create for others, because we don't know what we don't know what is in other people's heads, what allows them to feel safe or not. And we can't impact as well. There are certain things that we can't impact. So you might choose to create a space, but then for some reason it becomes a space that somebody doesn't feel safe in. And we'll give examples of that too.
If you're somebody that likes reading and sort of researching the background to things, there's a lot written, particularly by American universities, about the difference between safe and brave space, because I think in safe space has become, in a way, almost overused, and so people are looking for another way of talking about things. And there's been a shift towards brave space, that perhaps we can't totally guarantee that we can create a safe space, but can we create a space that's brave enough? We'll go into more detail about this after you've had more of a chance to think, but there is quite a lot written by American universities that have done a lot of thinking about this.
Okay, so now we're going to be looking for a show of hands from you. If you can put your hand up if you're with us. There's a little hand sign that you can use to put your hand up. Because we're going to see whether it's feasible for us to do a shared listening around this with the people who've joined us today. And if enough people have put their hands up to do that, then we'll be able to do this with you. So if you can use your little hand.
Does everybody know how to do that?
No, you can just put your actual hand up. If not, you can say yes in the chat. Great, yeah, that we've got a little thumbs up. So what we're looking for is, are you in a space where you can talk without being interrupted, and you can listen to somebody without being interrupted?
Pair you up.
Because we're going to pair you up. Yeah. So I can see that yeah, lovely. So 1, 2, 3.
Lynn's in a cafe.
Okay, so Lynn's a no. And what about Ab? Okay.
Faye, are you able to talk? Although you can't have your camera on, can you talk to somebody? She's there. Because otherwise I could go with somebody, Julia. If you...
Well, what I was thinking of, if people can't, what we'll do, what we can do is we can model it for those people who can't. Tessa and I can stay here and we'll model the shared listening for those people who can't. You'll hear us do the shared listen rather than participating. So I was thinking, who was it just Lynn who can't, was it Lynn and Abha who can't?
I think there are 4. There's Nikki, Cheryl, Charlie and Faye that can. I haven't heard anything.
Can you put them, so we'll put you in a breakout room in a moment. We'll just explain to you what you're gonna do first.
Yeah, so a listening partnership is a really useful tool to have as part of a talking circle or some other kind of brave space that you're trying to create. Particularly if it's a group setting where not everybody might be very comfortable talking in front of other people. So often it's done in pairs. I have done it in triads and other formats as well. But it's an opportunity to break away from the main group and have one person listen to you as you talk, and then you swap over. So I'm not sure how long we're going to do it for now, Julia, but you're going to have a set number of minutes, and we'll give you a question to talk to, and one person is the speaker. So that person is going to speak uninterrupted. The other person is there purely to listen. So it's good to make eye contact and you can nod and but you're not going to respond in the usual way that you would in a conversation. And depends on the person, that might feel a little bit awkward because you want to show that you are listening, and maybe normally you do that through lots of speaking and reflecting back. But it is a lovely way to feel like you are concentrating just on listening and you're not having to formulate a response or think of something clever to say back. The one person speaking, the other person's purely listening, and then we'll swap over and give you both a chance to have the other role. In between, a really nice practice is to have clearing questions. So this is just, if you have got into a more reflective space, it's a chance for you to switch off from that deeper thought, and the questions can be something really simple, like, what have you had lunch? What did you have for lunch? What colour socks have you got on? Yeah, something really mundane and that's easy to answer, just to get out of that more reflective mode. And then Julia will send you a message into the breakout room saying, time to swap over. Oh, you're on mute, Julia.
All right. We're going to do the listening partnership 4 minutes one person, then 4 minutes the other person. And we're going to look at the question that we've just asked. What is a brave space? What is a safe space? So you've had a chance to journal, so you might, feel that you have got things to say about that. And just to make the point again that Tessa made, one way to create a space that feels maybe safer than it might otherwise feel is to give people an opportunity to journal about a topic that might be a tricky topic, or to work with twos. And that might not even need to be a tricky topic. It just could be somebody who's slightly shyer and doesn't feel comfortable speaking in a big circle. So not only are you going to get to practice, some of you, or witness us doing it, a shared lesson, but that is a tool. So we're giving you a tool that you can use that will help you create a space that is braver or feels safer.
And I really encourage you, if you run out of things to say, you can't think, just stay with being quiet rather than the listener coming in to fill that space. So you can listen to that person just being quiet while they have chance to think about something else that they might say on the topic.
And so that you don't have to choose who goes first, the person whose first name is earlier on in the alphabet goes first. So, if your name begins with an A, you're going to go first. So just look at your names, and that's a good way because you'll check each other's names out as well. So you'll learn each other's names. So if your name is earlier in the alphabet, you'll go first. And if your name's later in the alphabet, you'll go second. And apologies if you're in the middle of the alphabet and it takes a bit of time to work out who goes first and who goes second. Tessa, can you create the breakout rooms? And we're going to stay here and model it here. So when you see the breakout room, if you're somebody who put your hand up and said that you could do that, you'll join the breakout room and you will start your 4 minutes answering the question, what is a brave space? What is a safe space? There you go. So if you join the breakout room now, that's it. Okay. All right. So for those of you who remain, and for those of you who are watching this online, we're going to be modeling a listening partnership. And I guess my name begins with a J, so I'll be going first. So Tessa's going to keep an eye on the time for 4 minutes, and I'm going to speak about what I believe is a brave space or a safe space. So for me, and I'm very much speaking from the I, for me, a safe space is about my experience. So a safe space is about how I feel and whether I feel okay coming into a space and I feel safe and secure and comfortable. And ways that I might feel safe is if I really know why I'm coming to something. I know who's running it. I know the location. Sometimes I might not feel safe because I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know where I'm going for the first time. Something else that makes me feel safe is is not being on my own. Sometimes I feel really confident going somewhere on my own, but if it's a talking and listening circle, if it's something where I have to kind of show myself, I might feel more comfortable going with somebody else. Or even if I'm not going with somebody else, if I'm not going with someone else, I want to feel comfortable with the person who is holding that space. Also, if I'm going to a circle and it's about a sensitive issue, then I would want to feel that the person holding the space maybe has a level of experience that's relevant to it. So for an example, if I'm going to a grief circle, I would like that circle to be held by someone who's got experience of grief. Maybe they're trained in that. Often people who come from religious backgrounds are very used to that because they run, they literally hold funerals all the time. But so if it's a specific circle that I'm going for, a level of expertise is something that I would have an expectation of, or I would hope to be there. My views of a brave space is as a circle holder, because I can't guarantee as a circle holder that someone is actually going to experience a safe environment, because I've just given you what makes me feel safe in a circle. But then I'm going to listen to you, Tessa, hearing what you say is a safe. They're like, your idea of what's a safe space, it might be different to mine, and I might have done everything in my power to create a space that I would believe is safe, but I haven't ticked the box that you expected to be ticked, and I wouldn't have known that, and then that isn't necessarily a safe space for you. But because I've created a brave space, ideally there'll be an opportunity for somebody who comes to the space and maybe doesn't feel as safe as they might like to have them to actually come up to me and say, well, this space didn't feel safe for me because. So that would be my hope. Also, I might intend to create a safe space, but like a fire might break out and like the firehouse, like, there could be something that happens in the space that makes it not feel safe anymore for that person, that's out of my it's not something that I can deal with. So that's where it might feel like a brave space rather than a safe space. And also there's the other element with circle holding of other people being in the circle. So when there are other people in the circle, I can try to influence, as a circle holder, I can try and influence the circle to keep it as safe as possible. But there might be other people in the circle that impact it in some way to make it feel less safe. So those are some things that have just come up for me as thinking about brave space and safe space. And I feel like I've spoken for a long time.
You're clearing question. I'm just sending to the others.
Have we done? We're done 4 minutes.
A message. Yeah, that's the 4
There you
minutes.
go. I'm done with
the message.
And if, go on.
I was going to say to Amelie that we're just showing listening partnerships. So some of the people who are with us live have gone into breakout rooms, and then we're just doing it for those that can't actually interact at the moment. So you can listen.
Yeah, we're modeling shared listening based on the theme of shared space and of safe space and brave space. So my clearing questions. I'm ready for my clearing questions.
What did you have for breakfast?
I had eggs on toast for breakfast.
And what colour are your curtains?
They're kind of turquoisey blue.
Lovely. All right. So we're going to swap over. I've sent a message to the breakout rooms to the second person to start talking. So my take on it. For me, it's a bit that it's about semantics, really. I mean, they could mean the same thing, but as I was mentioning before, I think the idea of safe space has become quite loaded and it's been used a lot. And it's something that just comes off people's lips quite easily, like, oh yeah, I'm creating a safe space. But actually a lot of thought needs to go into creating a safe space. It's not something you can just declare, welcome, this is safe. There's things that you do beforehand to prepare, during the actual time of the group meeting, or perhaps you're meeting with one other person. It's how you're behaving during that time. And then even after that time, because of things like confidentiality, if you start talking about what was in that space when somebody had an expectation that what you were saying was confidential, that would break that safe space retrospective, going backwards, and mean that if that person came again into the safe space, they wouldn't feel safe. So it's what happens before, during, and after. And I think the idea of switching it instead to a brave space, I think, is to really take a new look at all of this and to say, maybe it's not as easy as we first thought when people, brought up this idea of safe space. Maybe before the idea of consent was so widespread. you know, our evolving has changed over time. So I think it's really good that we've got a fresh look at it. So for me, brave space is about trying to set up the right kind of environment where somebody might feel that they can share something that they might not normally in everyday conversation or in most spaces where the rules of communication haven't been explained explicitly. So you're thinking, I think I know how this relationship is working. Whereas in a brave space, it should be made explicit. So you are really clear what the rules of engagement are. And in that way, somebody may feel comfortable to share something a bit vulnerable, or maybe they don't. But it's with that sort of caveat that we can try our best, but we can't guarantee it. And so I'm trying to take responsibility for our own feelings, and we're judging ourselves in each situation. Do I feel comfortable now to share? And maybe sometimes saying, I don't at the moment, this would need to happen for me to feel comfortable. So for me, it's, I think originally both the safe space and brave space were about the same thing, but it's a fresh look. And it's acknowledging also that as facilitators of a space, we're human. Sometimes I find I facilitate better than others. I think that's okay, you know, and it's a real art. So I think we get better at it over time. We build confidence. Yeah, it's a big topic. And I think it's something that's worth going back to again and again, because I think over the years my facilitation has really changed. I'm much more comfortable dealing with bigger topics, really sensitive topics, than I was when I first started. So I think that's the 4 minutes. I'm going to send a message to the people in the breakout rooms. And if you want to ask me a clearing question.
I'm going to ask you what you had for breakfast this morning.
Porridge with blueberries.
Yeah. And what colour are your socks?
I'll have to have a look to remember. Oh, blue with a flowery pattern on.
Okay, thank you. So for those of you who I've just got there's someone who's just arrived. What we've been doing is we've been modeling something called listening partnerships. I would recommend you go back and listen to the recording for the beginning of the session to see how that worked. But what we've been doing is some people are in breakout rooms now, and they've had the opportunity to each person has spoken for 4 minutes on what they believe to be a brave space and what they believe to be a safe space. And in order to model that, Tessa and I have not gone into the breakout rooms for those people who've not been able to go into breakout rooms, and we've done that for ourselves. So I've spoken for 4 minutes on what I believe to be a safe space or a brave space, and Tessa has too. Normally, you would not be recorded doing the shared listening, even though this session is a recorded session that we are giving people the opportunity to watch afterwards when they've signed up. This element of the session where you've been in the position to go into breakout rooms has given you the opportunity to have a mini safer space than the big room. You've been able to talk to somebody without interruption, and they've been able to speak too without interruption. We would ask those of you who have been in that listening partnership to honor and respect the confidentiality of the other person who's spoken. And when you share back in the group, we would invite you to share from the I, from your own experience. And that's a precept that is often introduced into circle holding, that when people are invited to speak, they're invited to speak from the I, from your own experience, not using we, they, you, other. You're talking from your own perspective. Now I'm going to open all the rooms. I think everyone is back now. There
Yeah.
we go. Okay, so we're now going, so we've got 3 ways of working with this, that so modeling 3 ways of doing a talking circle. So the first way that we've looked at is the journaling. So you've been journaling about the topic. The second is the shared listening. And the third is discussion. For the purposes of this meeting today, the discussion is going to be in the chat. But if you're in your own circle, let's say you're in a circle of 12 people, you're not time limited in the way that we are today, then you would invite people to actually speak. And there are ways in which you can invite people to speak that enable everyone to have the opportunity to speak.
It's really nice after a listening partnership. It might be not that you ask them directly about the content of what they were talking about, but the process. So how was it to be in the listening partnership? And that's a nice way of getting people to start talking in the group again.
Yeah, so that's a question that we're going to ask you here. If you want to pop up your answer in the chat, if you took part in a listening partnership, we would love to know how was your experience of being in the listening partnership. And if you want to pop that into the chat, then you can do that.
Well, you do that because you know, if you have a longer amount of time, you can also do listening partnerships with different people, so you can swap partners and sort of hear different experiences. And that can be a lovely way of building community and giving people a chance to share at a deeper level in a way they might not be comfortable in front of a whole group of people.
Yeah, and you might have come to this particular session looking for community, looking for a way to connect with other yoga teachers. And if you've had the opportunity to be in a listening partnership, you might reflect on whether that has been given to you, whether you've had the opportunity, or whether you've talked to someone that you would want to connect to further. And if you have, if you do feel like you've made a connection to someone, you can use the chat to speak personally to someone. You don't have to do it to everyone, but if you want to send a little message to the person that you did a listening partnership with and say, it was really lovely to connect with you, my contact details are, then you're very welcome to do that.
Because that's something we use a lot during our trainings, is when it's a sort of longer training, is inviting people to have a regular listening partnership, because then that kind of keeps up that there's a feeling of continuity between the bigger sort of, say you're doing a monthly circle, that people are keeping in touch and have that special listening space outside of that.
Yeah, and I mean, we are talking about safe space and brave space here, but we're also talking about listening circles in general and communities in general. And you might have a WhatsApp group for your local yoga class. A lot of people do. And it can be really, or, for your circle. And that can be a way to connect people. They know the WhatsApp group or the whatever group chat it is. I'm saying WhatsApp. It's only for that circle. It can be for telling people when things are happening next time. And maybe they can use that to connect with each other and contact each other about creating a listening partnership. We do that too. So in trainings that we run, we often set up a WhatsApp group specifically for the training. And it's a place where people can chat about when, where, and hows of getting together.
Charlie says it was
yeah,
good. We heard, also found it really rewarding to just sit and have the whole space to be able to be quiet and listening. But yeah, it can be really lovely for it to be more straightforward than a normal conversation where you're sort of maybe sometimes second guessing things or busy trying to think of a good response.
Yeah. So thank you. You can keep on sharing that feedback if you'd like to in the chat. One of the things that we're really on with running circles is timing, and we only have 15 minutes left of this circle time together. So we're going to go on to looking at 3 tips to create a brave space. So the first tip is looking at the clarity of your invitation. So I'll say a little bit about that, and then Tessa will say a little bit of that. So with the clarity of the invitation, it's knowing we are going to be meeting at this time, in this place, for this amount of time. The subject is going to be this. And for example, you might share in the invitation, this is going to be a closed circle for 12 people, where everything that happens in circle stays in circle. and then that you've given a clarity in your invitation. Tessa, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really about managing expectations. And when I was modeling the listening partnership with Julia in the main room, I was saying, you know, it's when you're creating this container for a safe space or a brave space, it's about what happens before as well as what actually happens during the time itself, and also what happens afterwards. If everybody goes out and breaks confidentiality, retrospectively, you kind of upset that space. So by having a clear invitation in marketing, or if you're sending joining instructions about how to arrive to the space, if you've got that clarity around what you're expecting from people and what they can expect from you as a facilitator, it's going to really help set the foundations. And yeah, as Julie says, and part of that is timekeeping. So if you're saying it's a 2-hour circle, for example, you know, you might think, oh, everybody's having an amazing time and we'll just keep on going. But if somebody's expecting 2 hours and they need to go and get the bus, or they need to get home to take over childcare, or, you know, they've got to get up really early the next morning to go to a job, you're not actually doing them a favor by going over the time. So
Yeah, and also with the invitation, your invitation can be set out very, very clearly, the precepts for the event. And that's you aiming to create a safe space. However, somebody might choose not to abide by those precepts. So you might say this circle is for 12 people, and someone might come along and say, well, my cousin's here on holiday, and so I've brought her along. And that's her breaking the code, as it were. And that changes the space from a safe space to maybe one that isn't so safe. So that's why we use the word brave, because our intention can be to create a safe space, but something can happen that's outside of our control that turns it into something slightly different. So that's why I'm really creating a brave space. I don't know what's going to come up that might impact on that space. Okay, so we've already talked about this to some extent, but another example of what can help create a safe or brave space is precepts, is having a code of conduct for the space. And that's something that you can do that in the invitation itself. So for example, saying how many people are going to come, saying whether it's an open or a closed circle. So for example, the session today, we're as circly as we can be within the confines of what the needs are for this event. But we've made it very clear. This event is recorded. This is not a confidential space. We've created the listening partnerships, which are, you know, our intention is for the sharing that you've done in that to be confidential between the two of you. So we've set the boundaries of your expectations, and that can help create a safe space. Tessa.
So if I give an example of a talking circle, what I would often do is have a very quick sort of opening round where everybody gets a chance to speak out loud, say their name, something very simple, and then a settling practice like we did right at the beginning. And then I usually call them guidelines. So sharing the guidelines, and you're sort of explicitly stating how the communication is going to work in this setting. And it can also be co-created. So you can ask everybody in the group, is there anything you'd add to what I've said already? So we've already talked about confidentiality. You might talk about respectful listening and talking. So one way of putting it is lean speech. So really choosing your words carefully rather than going off into a massive monologue. Julia already talked about talking from the I, so talking from your personal experience. And that's a really good way if somebody's beginning to dominate because they're going into this big story of something that happened and telling you all the characters, you can say, oh, just a moment, can you tell us how you are feeling about it right now? And bring it back to the present moment, bring it back to that person. And it's much easier to do that if you set it up as a guideline right at the beginning of the space that you're creating. So you can refer back to it rather than have to come in with this idea that maybe somebody's never thought of before. And another really big one for me that I find people appreciate is saying that it's not a space where we're, you know, finding solutions, that it's not a space where we're going to fix somebody or fix their situation. It's about listening. And that's really nice, because often people find their own answers when they can just talk out loud about the situation. And again, if somebody does start to come in and fix things and offer unsolicited advice, you can say, oh, I'll remember that guideline at the beginning. So you're setting up that structure at the beginning, and then it makes it much easier if there are big characters to rein them in and give everybody a chance to speak and be heard.
So we've looked at the clarity of the invitation and the guidelines. And then we're going to be looking at honoring boundaries. That's another way that we can help create a safe or brave space. And one of the boundaries that you can create is who that circle is for. So there's a lot of talk about inclusivity in circle. We want everyone to feel welcome. I went to a circle recently where somebody literally named every possible demographic that could have been present and said, if you're this, you're welcome. If you're that, you're welcome. And I thought, well, how are they making their welcome? They're naming who's welcome, but I don't know how they're making me feel welcome. If you're creating a circle that is for a specific demographic, they might feel comfortable about talking about things that they might otherwise not feel comfortable. For example, there's hot flush me in my menopausal world. I'm actually really comfortable talking about it in any circumstances, but I might not feel comfortable. Whereas if I'm in a menopause circle, I know that I'm going to feel safer talking about the uncomfortable things that I might be going through as a menopausal woman. That safe, you know, that space has been made safer for me by making it for that demographic. And making it a menopause circle is fine. That means that somebody who is 15 or like 25 and nowhere near menopause, I mean, if somebody's experienced early menopause, they'd be welcome. But like somebody who's not in that demographic, they're not welcome in that circle. And that's okay. They probably don't want to be in that circle. So don't feel that making your circle exclusive isn't okay. And the more clarity you have around the demographic of your circle, the better, because somebody can go, I can see that this circle is an X circle, therefore it is for me.
That's what we find in the trainings. There are so many questions that people have are answered if you're very clear about who that space is for, and you've thought about the needs of those specific people. It starts answering lots of questions. For example, we were talking about timekeeping. Sometimes it's appropriate to have a very strict start time. You want everybody to be there, so you're all doing the settling together, you're going through the guidelines together, you don't have to then repeat it if somebody comes late. But for some demographics, like new mums, and they're just about to go to the house, they have a punami and they're late, or you're doing a circle for carers and their lives are a bit chaotic because they've got to make sure that the person they care for is looked after before they can leave. You might have a soft start and instead have a co-facilitator that can welcome in any latecomers and say what's happened already and just kind of help get them a cup of tea or whatever it is that you do. So knowing who your target audience is, of who's coming to that space, is really important to figure out, and then lots of other things will slot into place.
So I am conscious that we have 5 minutes. So today we have used the skills of journaling, shared listening, and discussion using the chat to discuss safe space and brave space. We have given you 3, possibly more than 3 tips on creating a brave space: your clarity of intention, your precepts or guidelines, and honoring boundaries, and your like who is your circle for. We're going to spend the last 5 minutes here talking about the trainings that we run and how you can really hone in on your circle holding skills. And when we get to 1 o'clock, you'll have the space. We're going to be turning off the video, ending the session. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask, not recorded, then feel free to do that. And there'll be a way of doing that if you're watching the recording as well. I'm going to cough for a moment. So Tessa, do you want to start by talking about the London Circle?
Yeah, Yeah, so we've got a couple of things coming up. When we were writing the book, it ended up being 20 chapters long. So there's a lot to say about circle facilitation and brave spaces. And we wanted to do an in-person training. So it's happening towards the end of February, and it's over a weekend. And
24th and 25th of February.
yes, and what we're really excited about is there are certain things you can't do in an online training, like red thread ceremony, fire ceremony, actually doing the crafts that you could use. It's a very good way if again you've got a sensitive topic, like say you're talking about puberty with tweens, and they will find it a bit embarrassing. You can get them busy doing things, and they're listening to everything, but not having, you know, sort of eyeballing each other. And we're going to be co-creating mandala and all sorts of beautiful things. So it's like a deep immersion in circle facilitation and brave space. And then there's also online training. I'll let Julia talk to that one.
Okay, so I've just put in the chat that if you use the code BRAVE10, that will give you a 10% discount until the end of January on our trainings. There are only 4 spaces left on the circle holding in-person training. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, then once that's full, it's in person. We can't expand the numbers for that. So the facilitator training, that starts on the 19th of February, and it's Mondays from 12:30 till 1 p.m. And that's the timing is UK time, so that's GMT. So if you're somewhere else in the world, then you'll need to make your calculations.
You said 12:30 to 1, which is far too short.
Sorry, to 3.
Yeah.
12:30 till 3. Did I say 1?
Yeah.
3.
Finished in time for school pickup.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. 12:30 till 3. Otherwise, it's really short. And because we run that over time, that is really great if what you're looking to do is set up your circle, see how it's running, like play around with your invitation. If it's something that you're really wanting to be doing, you'll have Tessa and I holding your hand through the process. So you might, it might even be that you want to start by running a workshop or a mini retreat, and you want to start planning for that, and you want to have circle holding elements in that. You might be really specific and be wanting to run a regular talking circle, and you want to run that. So let's say you want to be running a monthly talking circle. You start the 6 weeks training on the 19th, your first circles, let's say the first week in March. You'll have an opportunity in the circle holding training with us to flap around, be scared, go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm actually running my first circle, and we'll be holding your hand through that, and you'll have other people who are doing circle facilitation going through that with you. That training is much more connected to the book, and so you're going to have exercises, practices, things that you can do that'll help prepare you.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, because it's over a number of weeks, you'll get lots of examples of how to open the circle, how to close the circle, because we'll do different things each time. So
yeah. Okay, so Tessa's going to talk to the fundamentals training. I'm just going to find the link to pop in the chat for the facilitator training.
So if you're just sort of dabbling with the idea at the moment, there is a sort of morning workshop to introduce the sort of key components so that you could get running with something. We're just so passionate about the power of circles. You know, they can be used with all sorts of different demographics or around all sorts of different interests. So sometimes people just need a little nudge just to feel confident to get going. So if you're already a yoga teacher, you are holding space, and it's just having a sense of some of the structure, how to build that container to make it as safe as you possibly are able to. So are you going to put the link up for the fundamentals? Because that's a little
yes, I'm just putting a link up for the book as well. Someone's just asked for the link for the book. It comes out in October, but that's the link for the book, and I'm going to just share the link as well for the fundamentals. While I'm doing that, Tessa, do you want to talk about the yoga nidra, which is our final?
Oh yeah, or another way to do it. We run a course of yoga nidra and circle holding, because we think they go together very, very beautifully. So if yoga nidra and creating your own, well, we don't, we encourage people not to write things down, but actually to be able to be creative and responsive in the moment. It's a very trauma-informed way of working with yoga nidra. But we incorporate that with aspects of circle holding, because that's a way then you can help people feel comfortable before they lay down to have that practice, but also checking in with their experience to make sure that they're okay before they go home. So it fits really beautifully together. And that's coming up in April after the Easter holidays, that one starts.
Yeah, so I've shared all of those in the chat, and it is bang on 1 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you've joined us live, if you want to stay on and ask any questions, then you're really, really welcome to. And if you're watching this online, you'll see there's a section for asking questions too. And you can contact me directly at info@yogateachersforum.org. And Tessa, do you want to share your contact details as well?
hello@tessayoga.co.uk. And just before you press stop on the recording, I was just going to say, if you're interested in the book, you can sort of click through for the link that Julia put for pre-order, and there'll be a launch. There will be an online launch that you can come and join us and be part of a sort of circle in that way in October. So it'd be lovely to stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely have ways of staying in touch. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to just stop the recording now.